Uh, Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and honorable members of the National Assembly. I want to respond to the questions raised by Honorable Kamket but I'll start by giving background. Madam Speaker, allow me just to give a brief background on the fund. The Equalization Fund is established under Article 204 of our Constitution 2010, which requires that 0.5% or 0.5% of all revenue collected by the national government each year, calculated on the basis of the most recent audited revenue as approved by the National Assembly, be paid into the fund. Under Article 204(2), the national government may use the fund only to provide basic services in areas of water, roads, health facilities, and electricity to marginalized areas to the extent necessary to bring the quality of those services to the level generally enjoyed by the rest of the nation, so far as possible. So, Madam Speaker, the fund is currently operationalized by the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration Regulations of 2021. The regulations provided for establishment of the Equalization Fund Board, Secretariat, and County Technical Committees in beneficiary counties, Treasury to develop an appropriate instrument for the administration of the fund. Now let me speak to what is the scope of what I'm presenting today. One, this submission is made to facilitate the discussion whereby the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning has been scheduled to appear here today to address two questions, but I will start with this one by Honorable William Kamket. So I'm required to address three questions relating to the same topic and explain, give an explanation and status report of the Equalization Fund in terms of how it has been utilized, more specifically in Baringo County. So let me go straight into addressing the questions. Madam Speaker, I was required to report on the implementation status of the Equalization Fund for the years ending 30th June 2023 and 2024 in Baringo County, including the amounts allocated and disbursed and the status of the projects undertaken. The Equalization Fund Appropriation Act of 2023, Madam Speaker, appropriated 595,027,099 shillings for the provision of basic services, water, roads, health, and electricity to the 90 marginalized areas spread across 15 wards and 4 constituencies of Baringo County. The position is summarized in a table below, where I've indicated the amount appropriated. I've also given marginalized areas, wards, and constituencies covered in terms of project coverage. The project proposals submitted were valued at 592 million for 150 projects, but projects that were approved by the board were 140.
Hold on, CS. What is out of order, Kamket? Give Honorable Kamket the mic.
Madam Speaker, I did not want to interrupt the CS.
You have already interrupted.
I did not want to. But what he's reading, I do not have. I thought parliamentary practice is that he should have provided the reply before. Now he's reading his own things. We do not know whether what he's referring to.
Honorable Kamket, we will organize for you to get a copy, but this response is for the House. So
I mean, they should have even given the response to the House, not for me.
We give, it will be given. But in the meantime, let the CS just give the response. You'll be getting the copy. Sunkuli.
I'm just trying to say, if you listen to the answer, the Honorable CS is saying the table below. That presupposes a situation where we have a written document so that we can follow the table. I'm sure he does not want to read the table because he believes that the answer has been supplied.
Clerk, can we get the Response in circulation. Honorable Ruto. It's also because you're not using your card, Honorable Ruto. Yes. Locating you becomes a problem.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. Actually, you really indicated what I wanted to say, so that in the interest of time, Cabinet Secretary to find time to be here today is not as always as it is, as you know how busy that ministry is. But would you guide officially that copies now be presented to us so that we're able to follow?
I already did, and let this be on the two questions, because I see the other question, without preempting, also has some breakdowns that would need for the members to follow as you read. But continue, CS, as we get the copies. How far are we, Clerk? At least give Honorable Kamket the first copy. Yeah, he already has a copy. Continue, Honorable CS.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and my apologies for this response getting to members late. But the table I was referring to, number one item is the amount that was appropriated by this House, Equalization Fund Appropriation Act of 2023. In Baringo County, it was 595,027,099 shillings. Then I have also indicated that the marginalized areas that were identified were 90, wards were 15, and constituencies covered were 4. And then project proposals that were submitted were valued at 592,869,000, covering 150 projects, and projects approved by the board were 144 out of the 150. Amount that was requisitioned and transferred to the county, that is the special purpose account of the county, is 174,145,208. In terms of fund absorption rates, as at 30th June 2026, for that financial year, was just 29%. Projects at 90 to 100% completion were 46 out of the 144, and projects below 50% completion were 88 in number. So that is the first response to the first question. Question number 2 was on plans by the National Treasury to utilize the Equalization Fund directly for the implementation of approved projects in line with Article 204, Sub-Article 3B of the Constitution, so as to eliminate administrative delays. So I was supposed to respond to that. So, Madam Speaker, this is my response. The fund was first operationalized through the guidelines on the administration of the Equalization Fund, which were published via a Gazette Notice number 1711 of 2015, which provided for direct implementation by national government ministries, departments, and agencies. The Council of Governors challenged the constitutionality of those guidelines through High Court petition number 272 of 2016. In its decision, which was arrived at in 2019, the High Court granted the prayers of the COG and declared that the 2015 guidelines were unconstitutional and directed the National Treasury to develop an appropriate instrument for the administration of the fund. Consequently, the Public Finance Management Equalization Fund Administration Regulations of 2021 were developed to guide the utilization of the fund as conditional grants to county governments. Those are the guidelines that are in place today. So accordingly, the National Treasury will seek the advice of the Office of the Attorney General on a review of the 2019 High Court judgment and will submit a revised position for consideration once that advice is obtained. In the meantime, or in the interim, administrative delays are being addressed within the conditional grant framework, notably through direct transfer of approved funds into county special purpose accounts under the July 2024 guidelines, which shortens the disbursement chain, together with continued streamlining of project appraisal, approval, and disbursement. Question number 3 was asking me plans by the ministry to strengthen coordination between the national government, county governments, and other implementing agencies to ensure effective delivery of equalization fund projects at the local level in line with the principles of cooperation under Article 6 of the Constitution. And this is my response, Madam Speaker. The PFM, Equalization Fund Administration Regulations 2021, establishes a multi-tied institutional framework for the oversight of the implementation of the fund at both the national and county levels. This framework is intended to ensure the effective management and implementation of the fund from the national level down to the community level. So at the national level oversight, Madam Speaker, 2 bodies provide strategic direction and administrative support for the fund. One is the Equalization Fund Advisory Board, which provides strategic leadership and oversight. And that board is chaired by a member appointed by the Cabinet Secretary. And we have even principal secretaries of National Treasury and the principal secretary in charge of devolution. And then we have other members. Then the second body is the Secretariat, which is led by the CEO. It provides day-to-day technical and operational support in the implementation of the fund. Now, at the county and community level, coordination consists of: 1 is the CTC, that is County Technical Committee, consisting of County Commissioner, who chairs it, the CEC members in charge of finance, Constituency Development Fund managers sit in that committee and chairperson, and a county assembly representative and heads of the implementing sectors. At the sub-county technical committee level, which assesses project feasibility and cost, monitoring implementation and prepares quarterly progress reports, and also strengthening coordination and accountability at the sub-county level. Here, it's being, then we have the Project Identification and Implementation Committee. It conducts public participation, this is at the lower level, identifies and prioritizes projects responsive to local needs, and provides oversight of implementation, embedding inclusivity and accountability at the community level. So measures that we have taken to strengthen coordination: A, we have operationalized a formal collaboration framework, institutionalized joint monitoring and verification, providing capacity building and technical support. We are also strengthening reporting, M&E and a central information system. E, we are deepening structured intergovernmental engagement and sustaining community participation and accountability. So, Madam Speaker, that is my response to the first question on the same topic by the Honorable Kamket. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, Honorable Kamket, just hold it a bit. Honorable members, I know you have a lot of follow-up questions, and I know there is a lot of interest on this matter. But allow us, so that we have better order, that we let the member for Samburu West ask her question, let the CS respond, then we'll take any follow-up question together. Member for Samburu West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status of the Equalization Fund in terms of arrears and disbursements made as of the financial year 2026-2027, including a county-by-county breakdown of allocation and releases? Secondly, provide a report on the progress made in the implementation of the Equalization Fund since its inception, including an assessment of whether its implementation and actual disbursements to beneficiary counties are consistent with the constitutional objective of uplifting the most marginalized areas. And lastly, Madam Speaker, explain the rationale for changing the number of counties benefiting from the Equalization Fund from the initial 14 counties to the current 34 counties. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
CS.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, I will not go back again to the background, because that I did while answering the other question by Honorable Kamket. Now, to the questions raised by the MP for Samburu West, the Honorable Naisula Lesuda. First, I was required to provide status of the equalization fund in terms of arrears and disbursement made as of the financial year 26-27, including a county-by-county breakdown of allocations and releases. Status of the transfer. Madam Speaker, cumulative receipts into the fund since its inception is 22,422,361,366 shillings, against cumulative constitutional entitlements of Kenya shillings 90,343,414,499. So in the table, and I hope now members have this answer or the response with them, the table that I've titled 2, entitlement, payment, and arrears to the equalization fund as at 30th June 2026. So if you look, the first column is a financial year. The base year is simply the year that we use to calculate how much was supposed to be transferred to the equalization fund. Then we have indicated the audited and approved revenues based on the law. And then equalization fund entitlement, I have listed that column, and you can see the total is 90 billion plus. Then amount in DORA has been indicated. If you check, you'll find the first 3 years there was nothing. Then payment into equalization fund is amounting to 39 billion 222 million 361,366. And then arrears is 51 billion 121 million 53,133. So let me now elaborate. Disbursements under the Equalization Fund Appropriation Act of 2018, 12.4 billion. Now, Madam Speaker, under the Equalization Fund Appropriation Act 2018, Parliament appropriated 11,801,199,601 for the implementation of 360 projects across the 14 beneficiary counties identified under the first marginalization policy. So the first marginalization policy identified only 14 counties, and 360 projects were proposed for implementation at a cost of 11 billion plus. The full appropriated amount was subsequently transferred by the National Treasury into the Equalization Fund account to facilitate project implementation. By the end of the financial year ended 30th June 2026, cumulative transfers from the Equalization Fund to the implementing ministries, departments, and agencies amounted to 10,976,662,326, representing a 95% of the approved allocation. And I have put there the table of each county, the 14 counties which actually benefited in the first formula, and then the allocated amount and the transferred amount. You can see there's just a small difference. Now, disbursement under Equalization Fund Appropriation Act of 2023. Now, this one occurred after the change in regulations. Madam Speaker, under the Equalization Fund Appropriation Act 2023, Parliament has appropriated 10,023,440,883 for the implementation of projects in the marginalized areas identified under the second marginalization policy. In accordance with Regulation 24 of the PFM Equalization Fund Administration Regulations of 2021, these resources are disbursed as conditional grants to beneficiary county governments through special purpose accounts established for the implementation of Equalization Fund projects. By the end of the financial year ended 30th June 2026, cumulative disbursements to beneficiary county governments amounted to 6,924,402,672. 13 counties had absorbed 90 to 100%. And these counties include Isiolo, Mandera, Marsabit, Murang'a, Homa Bay, Taita Taveta, Nandi, Kajiado, Meru, Samburu, Kisumu, Turkana, and Tharaka Nithi. Those counties, 13 of them, actually absorbed from 90 to 100% out of the 34 counties. However, 7 counties had recorded nil absorption, including Bomet, Busia, Elgeyo Marakwet, Garissa, Kericho, Lamu, and Trans Nzoia counties. The fund continues to provide close support to the 7 counties to enable them to progress the approved projects through the implementation and payment cycle, so that expenditure commences and absorption improves. I have given a table again, Madam Speaker, which I believe members are able to follow, and you can see the percentage of absorption, including the counties that I've mentioned, which have consumed 0, and those which have consumed 100%, like Isiolo and like Mandera, and also Muranga, which have consumed 100%, and the others between 90 and 100. Now, I was also required, Madam Speaker, to provide a report on the progress made in the implementation of the Equalization Fund since its inception, including an assessment of whether its implementation and actual disbursements to beneficiary counties are consistent with the constitutional objective of uplifting the most marginalized areas. This is my response, Madam Speaker and honorable members. Under the first marginalization policy, as I reported earlier, 360 projects valued at 11.8 billion were approved for implementation across the 14 marginalized counties. As at 30th June 2026, 266 of these projects had been reported by the implementing MDAs as fully complete, and 31 projects substantially complete. But under the second marginalization policy, a cumulative total of 1,624 projects valued at approximately 9.94 billion had been approved for implementation as at 30th June 2026. Out of this, 1,072 projects reportedly fully complete. Projects under these 2 policies are spread across the sectors as envisaged in the Constitution. Disbursements under the 2 policies are restricted to basic services, which include water, roads, health facilities, and electricity. These are mentioned in the Constitution. Currently, cumulative transfers from the Equalization Fund to the implementing ministries, departments, and agencies and of the beneficiary county governments amounted to 17.2 billion shillings. I have again provided the table under the details under table number 5, allocation and budget by sector of Equalization Fund appropriation of 2018 and that one of 2023. Now, lastly, Madam Speaker, I was asked to give a rationale for changing the number of counties benefiting from the Equalization Fund from the initial 14 counties to the current 34 counties. Madam Speaker, Article 216(4) of the Constitution of Kenya mandates the Commission on Revenue Allocation, CRA, to determine, publish, and regularly review a policy in which it sets out the criteria by which to identify the marginalized areas for purposes of the Equalization Fund. First marginalization policy used the perception survey, a report on historical injustice, and a county development index to identify 14 counties. The second policy deviated from the first policy by using a sublocation as a unit of analysis instead of a county and identified 34 counties. So the CRA will provide more information regarding the criteria for identifying marginalized areas as per Article 216(4) of the Constitution. And I believe this formula is usually submitted to the National Assembly. So in conclusion, Madam Speaker, the National Treasury appreciates this Honorable House and is ready always to offer all the necessary information and clarification as is required. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and that's my submission.
Very well. Honorable members, allow me to first give Honorable Kamket for any clarification or follow-up question. Then we'll go to Honorable Naisula. Honorable Kamket, Honorable CS, kindly take note of the follow-up questions.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the Cabinet Secretary, in his response, stated, and I quote, that the National Treasury will seek advice of the Office of the Attorney General on a review of the 2019 High Court judgment and will submit a revised position for consideration once that advice is obtained. Honorable Speaker, I take it that I want to ask the CS, is it his position, therefore, that he is not satisfied with the judgment of the court? And given what is going on the ground, why has it taken him so long to review or to get that advice in order, therefore, to review the regulations and consider reverting to the old guidelines or even guidelines that allow the CS to directly utilize the funds given the amount of theft that is happening at the county level? Secondly, Madam Speaker, we are talking here politely about administrative delays. But indeed, what we are talking about is we have situations like, for example, in Baringo, we have intra-county marginalization. There is a deliberate delay by the county government, led by the county governor and his CECs, not to implement this fund. And that is why you'll find it is at 29%. Baringo, Madam Speaker, Tiati constituency has the highest allocation of equalization fund. It's the most marginalized constituency in Kenya. And it's a shame that the county government is not able to implement this fund to help the people of that constituency. So I think those clarifications is what I need for now. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Very well. Member for Samburu West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, CS, for your response. Even though I feel like the responses were just lifted from somewhere, they are very book smart. But I need answers, especially from where you sit as the Cabinet Secretary, who then supervises and also releases these funds on issues of equalization fund, Madam Speaker. One is that there is an arrears of 75.2% of the total entitlement from when we started implementing the equalization fund. That is over 67 billion. I would like to know from the Cabinet Secretary what plans are there to ensure that these funds, because every other financial year will continue accumulating more arrears, while there was a reason why this equalization fund was initially captured in our constitution, Madam Speaker. So I would like to know what plans are there to see that these arrears are cleared in the soonest time possible. Secondly, I have listened to the Cabinet Secretary, and I remember also in this House, in the second policy, on why we moved from 14 counties to 34 counties. I just want to know the view of the Cabinet Secretary, because the drafters of this constitution, and I know that CRA is an independent commission, but the CS would have an input in just telling us there was a reason why the drafters of this constitution thought of the 14 counties. Now we are spreading thin to 34 counties, Madam Speaker, and then we're even going further towards, while then the whole issue, my own thinking, Even as I think of the third policy, I'm not too sure when it's supposed to come, and I think the CS should really be keen on it as well. We are looking at counties that have been marginalized for so many years. A county where from corner 1 to corner 2 has no tarmac. A county where water is scarce from corner 1 to corner 2. We cannot have pockets of a county which is developed but only a ward. Then we include it to spread thin this money, Madam Speaker. Then lastly, on the issue of, on genuinely whether where you sit as a cabinet secretary, you feel these funds are meeting, now forget about the paper response. Tell us as a house, forget about the reports you get from different sectors telling you we've implemented these projects. Implementations of project is one thing, but is it meeting what it was intended to do? When you find a county doing a road of 7 million with equalization fund, 10 million, 15 million, how are we going to catch up with the rest of the country, Madam Speaker? So genuinely just tell us, not that the road is complete, but is it meeting the spirit of why we have equalization fund in the first place? Or we will continue to marginalize ourselves as we implement these projects. Madam Speaker, thank you very much.
I've indulged the two because they were the original questioners. And I know there's a lot of joyriders, but CS, I would like you to first respond to that. If there will be any other follow-up question, then we'll go to the question. Respond to the two first.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me respond to two questions each from the questioners, those who raised the questions, beginning with Honorable Kamket. And Honorable Kamket asked me specifically that when I've indicated that we are seeking advice from the Attorney General on whether to seek a review of the judgment or not, and whether this is an indication that I was not satisfied with the judgment. Let me put it this way. First, this judgment, we lost out in the appeal because we did not appeal it. Therefore, what we can do is just to seek a review. I'm told by lawyers that that is permitted and allowable. As to whether I agree with the judgment or not, my position, and that this is a position of a non-lawyer, is that the Constitution speaks to implementation either directly or conditionally, as conditional grant. So in my view, I think my position would have been that the judge should have considered that the national government also had the constitutional mandate to administer, or rather implement projects directly. But I don't want to question the wisdom of the judgment or try to appear like I am questioning the judgment. That is why I have sought an opinion from the Attorney General on how to progress. I am seeking, actually I have not even sought the opinion. Let me be very categorical about it, very clear. But we are going to seek that advice. In terms of intra-county marginalization, I can't agree more. As a matter of fact, the whole question of devolution, we need to start asking ourselves whether we are devolving resources sufficiently enough to the grassroots. Because we assumed that once we devolve resources from the center, the national government to the counties, that sanity will prevail at that local level. But at times, again, you find some regions, some areas within the county being marginalized for whatever reason, whether clan or voting demographics. So I agree that that needs to be looked into. And I don't really understand when Honorable Kamket says that there is a deliberate delay and probably bordering on sabotage of projects. It is my belief and understanding that these projects are actually generated by the same government, the same county government. They are the ones which their projects come through project identification and implementation committee, which then is cascaded to the sub-county and the rest and the rest. So I don't see why the counties would again fail to implement the projects they have participated and facilitated identification. But I would want to mention that in the event of inefficiencies, like it is in Baringo County, then we can suspend. The law allows us to suspend the funding of those projects. So that we can take action on if it is reported to us and we are certain that there is inefficiency. On the two questions by my sister Lesuda, on our plans that I have to eliminate the accumulation of arrears, this fund has had challenges from the beginning. By the way, the first financial year, which should have seen this fund having resources in it, was from 2010-2011 financial year, because immediately the constitution was passed, this fund was not suspended. But because there was no legal framework and a lot of challenges from the beginning, it took about 3 financial years, if not more, before the fund was put into effect. And that has led to challenges on this fund. And there have been issues with these formulas, and now we have accumulated so much arrears. And the other problem, and I'm not passing judgment on this house, but we have also noticed that any time when we have supplementary budget revisions, even without being proposed from the National Treasury, the National Assembly is usually very quick in removing equalization fund. So I would also appeal to this honorable house that please in future consider ring fencing this any allocation already provided in equalization fund, so that it doesn't again suffer the fate that it has suffered for over the years. So that is another reason why we have had arrears into this fund. Finally, what is my personal view on increasing the number of counties from 14 to 34? Honorable Speaker, Honorable Lesuda, through the Speaker, let me make it very clear that I was in this parliament when we passed the 2010 Constitution. I am very conversant and aware of why we went this route of creating a specific fund to target areas that have historically been marginalized. Actually, we were very clear in 2010 on what we meant by marginalization. It was not pockets of marginalization across the country. I will tell you that for a fact. And by the way, I come from a region which is also considered marginalized because it is a Yemen. You will remember just the other day, Madam Speaker, some individuals, some characters across here went to my place and they called us, we are living in Yemen. I believe Yemen is, they use that word to clearly state that that area is marginalized, which is true. But the level of marginalization in Suba, South, or Homa Bay, which is also historical, cannot be compared, for example, to Mandera, or Wajir, or Isiolo, or Masabi. So for Homa Bay, where I come from, which is also marginalized, and is Yemen, that marginalization cannot be compared to these other areas. So in my view, I think it was a mistake by Commission on Revenue Allocation to increase the number of counties from 14 to 34. That is my honest opinion, and I'm not saying it for the first time. I have said it before, even when I was launching a report by Equalization Fund. I said we must reconsider this second policy. It is now making us lose foresight and focus on why Equalization Fund was embedded in our Constitution. We can use other resources which are devolved to the counties to make those regions which have not been brought to where they should be. But for marginalization, equalization, let us confine it to the historically marginalized counties like Samburu, like Baringo, like Turkana, like Mandera, Wajir, Isiolo, Marsabit, and also Garissa. Those regions, no one can deny that those regions have historically been marginalized in this country. So that is my response to that question, and I hope those who are involved in decision-making for the third policy are listening to this debate, and my position as Cabinet Secretary is very clear on that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, there is a lot of hands going up. Allow me to indulge Honorable Kamket. What is out of order?
Madam Speaker, I did not want the, thank you so much for indulging me. I did not want the Cabinet Secretary to get away with the final part of his answer, because the first policy, Honorable Speaker, left Tiati out of the group of marginalized areas. So when he says that he left Baringo and Tiati for that matter, thank you very much, Honorable Maklap, left Baringo out. And now, when the second policy is done, with the current, it became clear that actually the most marginalized constituency in Kenya is Tiati. So if the first policy did not identify that, how wrong is the second policy? So I think, Honorable Speaker, in as much as, marginalization is not a birthright of anyone. So those who are in the first policy must not be mean to the extent of denying others who benefited through the second policy.
Okay, honorable members.
So I think the Cabinet Secretary should not go that route. I think the Commission on Revenue Allocation did the right thing by going to the sub-location level in order to get the right report.
You have made your point.
Of marginalization.
Honorable Kamket and members, we have had this debate not once on this floor. Some of you were proponents of the expansion of the first policy. Some of you have not supported that expansion, but the CS was answering the question by Honorable Naisula if he personally, in fact it was a personal question, if he personally supports, and he has given his view, and he said it's a personal view, but the responsibility goes to the CRA. So, honorable members, I would want us to, yes, Honorable Naisula, there's a question you did not answer from Honorable Naisula, then I'll open it up.
Thanks, I'll be very brief. The last question was about the impact of the projects, because you've stated that the projects were complete, but it almost ties to the second question in terms of the impact of those projects that are being implemented, especially at the county level, whether you feel they meet the
In fact, CS, Naisula's first take was, do you personally feel the spirit of what the equalization fund was to achieve? Has it achieved? Yes, that was the question.
Madam Speaker, to be honest with ourselves, this fund has not achieved its intended objective. It has not, because really, if you look at the way we have spread it too thin, and that's why I still go back to my position. Yes, it could be true that probably we left one county or so with the first formula, and that can be considered. But expanding it to 34 and spreading it across the country, where now you say that almost every county has some pockets of marginalization, is missing the original intention of this equalization fund. Remember, when we were debating, and I was in this house, Madam Speaker, I remember some of us argued that even Nairobi, there are areas which are marginalized. So we are at times confusing poverty with marginalization. The two are not the same. There is poverty and there is marginalization, and we can use different strategies to address both of them. There is urban poor, there is rural poor, and then we have marginalized areas. And marginalized areas, you don't need rocket science to really know an area that is marginalized. You just drive there or make a point of visiting. And Madam Speaker, you will see real marginalization. And I'm happy that the Constitution even identified what is meant by marginalization: roads, health facilities, education, water, electricity. Clearly, an area which is marginalized in those bases, you can easily determine. So, but as to whether this fund has met its objective as a question by Lesuda, largely not. And to some extent, yes, some of the projects have made a whole lot of difference in people's lives in some of these areas. And I have visited a few areas and I've seen what the fund has done. But bringing the country to near equality or equalization as we had intended. Because a country that is so divided in terms of, or so unequal, is a country that is very difficult to govern. Sometimes we just laugh about some of these things and even put them on social media and compare that, look how constituency Honorable Makalap is dusty, and you put a road leading to your bedroom, which is so smooth, yet you know very well that even Makalap's taxes are on your road. And even if it was not his taxes, he's paying debt that was taken by some leaders who come from your village, who made sure that you have roads, and because his area has not produced a leader, then they are in dusty and you want to laugh at them. It is something that can bring civil unrest. It can create problem in the society. Part of what we saw in 2007, Madam Speaker, was the thinking in the people's minds that they are being marginalized. And that is why we almost lost a country. So in my view, if you ask me as a cabinet secretary, and I'm not speaking as someone who is coming from one corner of this country, because I know part of this money has gone even to Super South to address some marginalization in some sub-locations there. But I am not cabinet secretary for Super South. I am speaking about Kenya, and I know for sure there are areas which are so marginalized that they need this money more than other areas. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. Honorable members, I know there is a lot of interest. If we keep the questions brief and precise, very many of us will speak. Honorable member for Marakwet West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, CS. CS, under Table 4 of your submission, Elgeyo-Marakwet County, as of the end of this August, has received 0 allocation. Would you give us the reason that informs that? Number 2, CS, since the Constitution was passed, we've never had an equalization fund. The operational laws are, we have only subsidiary legislations and budget laws. There is no stand-alone substantive legislation on equalization fund. Do you think, as a CS for finance, that if we enact a substantive legislation on equalization fund, do you think we will unlock the challenges that we have, especially on the definition of terms like pockets of marginalization, which in my opinion was never envisaged by the Constitution? Finally, under the current framework, the regulation, operating regulation, we have under Regulation 8G, expressly mandates the Equalization Fund Advisory Board to establish a framework for collaboration between the national and county governments. But CS, why has this particular framework not been established, which provides for collaboration between the national and county governments so as to give effect to Article 6.2 of the Constitution? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Funyula.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Looking at Table 4, I'm intrigued to understand, probably the Cabinet Secretary can explain why Garissa has had 0 absorption and why Busia, with a small pocket in Budalangi, has had 0 absorption. Finally, Honorable Speaker, you need to guide the Cabinet Secretary that members of Parliament are not some elements from here. We are members of Parliament. If he got hiked because we exposed the hypocrisy in Homa Bay, we can do it outside there in a public rally. Thank you.
Member for Moyale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For members, I'm really trying to follow. If you want to speak on this specifically, do the intervention.
Madam Speaker, this is a very, very important debate. This cannot be closed.
And it's not a debate, honorable members, so it's follow-up questions.
Okay.
Be advised.
My question is, if you look at the team that comprises at the county level, the county commissioner is the chair. But when it comes to implementation of the project at the county, it's purely done by the county government. Yet, the decision made is all by provincial administrations and other members. How come the implementation